Is it working now? Are we coming through? Do you hear my message? Can I talk? Can I talk? I don't even know if I can talk. Excuse me. Can I finish? All right. Sounds like we are coming through. All right. I got a couple things I just want to get off my mind. And I'm just going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to tell you my opinions, okay? I'm going to try to be fair. I don't mean to attack anyone, but I do want to call out and comment on behavior that I believe is ridiculous. Okay? And how about this? If anyone disagrees with me at all, I'm going to lock down the comments and no one can say anything. Let me know if you think that's reasonable. So, yesterday, on the Knowledge Fight subreddit, there was this posting referring to the latest episode where Dan said some bullshit. Dan did a overall very wonderful job breaking down Lee Strobel and his bullshit. But as Dan is a human, by the way, one of my favorite humans of all time, he's a human and he makes mistakes and he is wrong sometimes and he says bullshit. He said some bullshit. I think I commented on this thread with a quote from the podcast, which I think is the impetus of this message. Tucker feels the need to deride atheists because he needs to obscure from the fact that he and hardcore atheists suffer from the same fallacy, which is pretending that they can prove something that's impossible to prove. One side says they can prove God does exist. The other side says they can prove God doesn't. And neither can really accept that they're fundamentally operating from an arbitrary answer that they've come up to for an unanswerable question. Now, the OP of this, as well as myself, and I think several other commenters, all express that this is bullshit. Because, I mean, depending on what you want to say as a hardcore atheist, which is not a super descriptive term, but it, in terms of like what most atheists may or may not want to identify themselves as, might consider themselves hardcore atheists, as in like they're really into the idea. Many came from religious upbringings, so in order to deconstruct the religious part of your life, that sort of necessitates a sort of interest and dedication into all things philosophy and argumentation and this kind of thing, atheism. Or it could mean someone who is just stridently strong in their position. Someone who is evangelical with their position. Like someone who learns and studies up everything in order to engage in conversation and seeks to change people's minds to reject God and be okay with accepting the idea that we might live in a universe without gods. I don't know. There's a lot of different things he can mean, but Dan seems to think a hardcore atheist suffers from the same fallacy as someone like Tucker Carlson when he argues for the existence of God. Now, there's already a lot of problems with that. Tucker does not say he can prove God exists. Tucker declares that it's obviously true that God exists. He is more related. He's more doing something like a um, pre whatever, when they just say like premise 1, God exists. Premise 2, fuck you. Conclusion, God exists. It's not an argument. It's not even enough to be a fallacy, because it's just, I'm whatever. Sure, there's a fallacy. It's just like stating the premise without any kind of I don't know, without backing it up at all. Not making an argument at all. The other side says they can prove God doesn't. Who fucking says that? Who fucking says that? Now, as we dig into the comments, a few people say that they definitely have heard people atheists who are like that, right? They're like, oh yeah, I definitely know those kind of atheists. And a lot of these quotes, responses that are pushing back against OP are saying things like, he didn't mean like you kind of atheists. He didn't mean like reasonable atheists. He meant like the hardcore ones. And there's various interpretations. What does that fucking mean? Hardcore. So let's talk about the top comment. We can't prove a God doesn't exist, but I think we've proved pretty conclusively that they don't intercede as a result of prayer. So to paraphrase Carl Sagan, what's the difference between an invisible, intangible God who doesn't affect anything and there being no God at all? Great point. Best answer. Prove God doesn't exist if you don't believe in him. No, it wouldn't matter if I did or didn't. Yeah, I mean, these are a lot of the feelings of atheists. I mean, this is what I agree with. I consider myself a hardcore atheist, to be honest. Like, the extreme. All right? And this is what I agree with. I agree that it's impossible to logically disprove the existence of something, especially something that has changing like variables in terms of what it is. When people can just switch and flip and flop and change the definition of what it is or the criteria of it even being a thing, then yeah, I can't disprove that. If you're just going to dance around and say, well, it's just something bigger than ourselves. Okay, because there's an elephant that's bigger than ourselves. So I guess there's a God. Or like things that you can't see. Yeah. Fucking ultraviolet rays. I can't see those. I guess there's a God then. It's just ridiculous. So also, I've been an atheist for almost 20 years in these depths here. The whole like you can't disprove the existence of something. This is atheism 101. This is we just bring it right back to the atheist or to the Christian, and we say, well, then how can you disprove the existence of any other God? How do you disprove the existence of Allah? How do you disprove the existence of Zeus, or of any of the many Hindu gods? How do you can't disprove the existence of them? You're in the exact same position, right? This is atheism 101. This is basic ass debate, bro. Teenage atheist arguing with your youth pastor kind of bullshit. These are the most extreme atheists. These are the ones who can like pull you into the muck and the mud and argue your ass off endlessly in circles, because we know how to. Are we back? All right. So let's look at the next comment up. This is the one who was pushing back, said, I don't think he was saying that. I remember him say that people like Tucker are asking for atheists to prove that God doesn't exist in these silly arguments they make, and that's not possible to do. That's why you can't take Tucker seriously. Now, first of all, the part that I've highlighted here, that is a true statement. I do agree with that is what Tucker is doing. But that is not what Dan said. Dan did not say that. Dan said what we wrote down here. Dan says that hardcore atheists suffer from the same fallacy and say they can prove God doesn't exist. Okay? You can't whitewash what Dan said and try to turn it into something agreeable and think, "Oh, it's all fine." Read the words he was saying. Now this person, no, actually it was a different person. They responded to me not to play the semantics game. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not atheist, I just don't believe in God, apostrophe S. Lol, but isn't atheism a broad camp? Yeah. Dan was referring to a specific flavor of atheist. He said hardcore atheists. If you want to say that's a specific flavor, whatever. That Dan was referring to a specific flavor of atheist. Yeah, and then he said bullshit about it. So if I'm representing of that flavor of atheism, I can argue that he's misrepresenting my position. In context, Tucker is only engaging with the most militant atheist. Tucker is not engaging with any atheists. Tucker is sitting down with an evangelist, talking about an imaginary atheist in his head. We would have a good show if he engaged with you. You would probably tear him apart with logic. I don't feel Dan should have to handhold some atheists through nuance. Whatever, condescending, I don't care. As far as the burden of proof argument, would you walk up to someone and demand proof of their God? Would you even take the time to infer someone's God isn't real? If I believed in a God and someone demanded I show proof, tell them to fuck right off. I've lost my train of thought. Until next time. Okay, fine. So I clap back at this guy because when he asked, would you walk up to someone and demand proof of their God? Yes, I fucking would. If they're asking that I do and say things in honor of their God, or if I watch my mouth and don't say things that might offend their little God, or if they ask for me to give fucking money or time or resources for me to like take my own life and take such a stupid thing seriously, I would ask for fucking proof. All right? If you're going to ask me to go to your church and raise my hands in honor of your God and close my eyes and sing to him, and then put money in a little plate to give to his servant, well, I'm gonna want to know that God's real and that his servant's actually his servant, and it's not just some dude fucking making it up. The guy trying to say, I'm not an atheist, I just don't believe in God, and then saying atheism is a broad camp. Well, what are you trying to say? You're saying you're not atheists, you just don't believe in God. I'm assuming you didn't mean that apostrophe. You probably just typed the apostrophe by muscle memory. He's saying he doesn't believe in gods, as in there are no gods. Well, then you're an atheist. And unless you want to say, like, I'm not an atheist because I think there might be a God. If you don't believe in God, you're an atheist. And like you said, it is a broad camp. It doesn't imply anything about your political beliefs or your personal values or your personality or anything like that. It's just lack of a belief in gods. I mean, for me, it is the positive belief that we live in a godless universe. Simple as that. Gods only exist in the sense that any fictional character exists. Santa Claus exists in a way as something that we all collectively hold in our heads. Whatever. It's an interesting argumentation, and there are various threads happening. This guy says, I'll cut him some slack because a lot of atheists, myself included, will say we can know that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Could some God exist? Maybe. But is it possible that the God of the Bible exists? No. That seems very unlikely. But that's just because I like Dan. I agree with your overall point. So yeah, this guy, and this other person is pointing out what I was sort of talking about earlier, is with given specific properties, those properties can be evaluated both for internal consistency and how well they line up with how the world actually works. Yeah. If there are falsification criteria, God can be shown to be false. Absolutely. So this guy's got -10 downvoted. The current cutting edge of the theistic apologetics is some guy, I think a physics professor, claiming that modern physics and the fine-tuning argument point to the existence of a monotheistic God with limited powers. Theistic apologetics. It's basically intelligent design without pseudoscience claims that rely on open and relational theology rather than... Open and relational theology tries to avoid long-standing philosophical problems that come up with classical theism, like the problem of evil. Atheist philosophers don't think any of this new theology or new apologetics is a good reason to believe in God. Atheists on the internet often insist that Christians must read the Bible in a literal sense and that show the Bible is absurd. I don't think that's true. That if a Christian responding to an atheist says, I don't actually believe or read the Bible in a literal sense, the atheist would say, good, because you shouldn't, because the literal sense is absurd. The problem is atheists on the internet are arguing with biblical literalists on the internet. So obviously that's like the low-hanging fruit. Like when you start a video game, you start on level 1, don't you? You start the tutorial. So when you're a baby atheist, you tackle things like biblical literalists, the flood of Noah, the young earth creationism. These are the things you cut your teeth on. The problem with this is that nobody really reads the Bible literally or treats every part of the Bible as equally important. True. But again, you have this false idea that the atheists on the internet think that they're... Atheists on the internet are... We say those things to call out the fact that, to expose the lie that they pretend that they're reading it literally. We know they're not reading it literally. We know that they're picking and choosing and interpreting it however the fuck that they want. They're not insisting Christians must read it in a literal sense. They're saying, they're responding to this phrase that Christians say that they should read it literally. There are so many Christians that think the Bible is literally, historically, factually true in every single word, down to the punctuation. That's not a fringe Christian belief. That is the standard evangelical position. So an atheist on the internet is responding directly to that. Problem with that, and nobody really reads about it. Yeah. So you end up with propagandistic arguments that Christians should agree with what atheists say the Bible says, or they're not being good Christians. But those arguments have more in common with political propaganda than rigorous arguments in philosophy or religion. No, those arguments are responses to the bad faith arguments that are getting shoved. It's not just getting shoved, it's getting sprayed. Like those fucking salt, they cover the road with salt, just bullshit. This is the bullshit that is being shoved into the brains of every young person in America for the past 50 years. It's a response to that. I'm not going to say this literally never happens. I've definitely seen it. However, there are plenty of good arguments for favor of atheism over even the most undefined nebulous God you can imagine. I think burden of proof is one of the best, but there are active arguments that do a good job demonstrating unlikeliness. I'm not saying there are no good arguments. I'm saying I think Dan is correct insofar as many people commonly use really bad arguments, and some of those arguments are really popular. The more popular Christian apologists usually don't use good arguments either. They use arguments that are popular with their audience, which are often bad arguments. They use the best arguments they possibly can. which are all shit. Literally, like, I've been searching for a good argument for the existence of God. In the first 4 hours of looking at a big list on some forum in 2006, I haven't seen a fucking fresh one ever. They're all shit and they all stink. So the idea of like, well, these really popular Christian apologists, the reason why they seem so terrible is because they're just using bad arguments that are popular with the audience. But there's these other secret theists who are using really good arguments for the existence of God. Well, fucking tell me them. I'd love to fucking hear it. What are these secret arguments that they've been saving? Oh, there's these really good arguments that they're just not wanting to tell anybody. I mean, this is some bullshit. Sorry, GHU, but you're talking bullshit, man. Pure bullshit. Not believing is not stating definitively that God doesn't exist. Most Christians are invested in the notion that atheists all follow the religion of atheism, which is an oxymoronic position. I miss the days of Christopher Hitchens. I don't. However, I do appreciate Alex O'Connor, also known by his moniker, Cosmic Skeptic. Okay. Alex O'Connor is also the name of a violinist. Okay, Blue Gemini. I tend to agree with this. Dan is much more prone to both siding any issue, which is generally a good impulse when you're working in conflict resolution, but not as helpful when discussing violent political ideology. I mean, you're not wrong. All right. Here's another goofball. He said extreme atheists, not all. I've met militarized atheists before who have made very similar claims. He didn't say extreme atheist. He said hardcore atheist. Militarized? Does that mean in the military, or did they mean to write militant? As an atheist myself, I feel there's so many shitty people that represent the movement. Worst of them all is Bill Maher, who is even a real atheist. Like most movements, the more vocal people out there tend to suck. Bill Maher is a self-professed agnostic. He's not an atheist. He has said multiple times that he's not an atheist. He's just Puritanism and anti-Muslim. And he had a TV show in the 90s where he could say bad words. So he became thought of as an atheist. He's not a fucking atheist. And he's a fucking idiot. He doesn't even know what he believes or why. This is why I can empathize with people who are of faith and honest, who have to be represented by fucking hucksters, mega pastors of assholes like Kirk and Tucker. I mean, Okay, this person's talking about Elevator Gate and the death of the atheist skeptic movement, and I tend to agree with this as well. They all went fucking full off. They just went fucking fascist. Like it was either like accept some very, very mild criticism from a woman, or just rip it off and align with the alt-right white supremacists. And they chose the latter. The atheist movement and skeptic movement have both kind of killed themselves by crossing over in the early 2010s. Both movements were emboldened by the crossover knowledge base and sheer numbers. Then Elevator Gate hit, And the shithead misogyny of many of the movements forced their way to the tops of the ladder. The progressive types, SGU, Cogdis, Puzzle, and Thunderstorm, kind of just kept chugging along with their heads down, while the shittiest, Bill Maher, Sam Harris, Richard... Again, what is with the Bill Maher? I mean, all three of these people are ghouls. Are absolute, like, brain-rotted fucking dipshit ghouls. So I understand putting the three of them together. But was Bill Maher ever a part of the new atheism? I don't think so. I mean, he gets along with them, and he fits the bill in terms of, like, being super, super anti-Muslim. Just got louder and louder and kept digging their heels in further misogyny, transphobia, Islamophobia. Yeah. All right. So when we're saying this, Min Chang said, he said, we're using such unspecified language that there's no sense in what is the meaning of any of this. What is a militarized? What is an extreme? What is a hardcore? Are they all the same thing? And are they all just making the same fallacy as Tucker Carlson? Because fuck you if you think that. I'm sorry, but if you're